All right, this video is going to be all about the XY state of your amps and effects. And what that essentially allows you to do is have two different settings per block. So right now I'm on the reverb block, and if I hold, you can see that the Y state is now turned on. So you can see that better if I go into my edit mode, and you can see reverb Y. And if I hold again, it goes back to X. Now, if you double push the edit button, that also changes your Y state. So even if you don't have an effect assigned to a switch, you can still get to your two different settings for that switch. So we've already determined that we can have pretty much whatever reverb and settings we want for that reverb. So my Y state is going to be more of a normal sound. I'm going to go to a spring, and we'll have this be just like a medium spring. And we'll keep the time down fairly low, maybe the mix down fairly low. And this is what that sounds like. Okay, that mix is still a little high for me. Okay, now I'm actually going to store this by pressing store and then enter and enter. So I'm not going to name the preset just yet, but that is how you save settings on here. Because if I go and change my Y state, I don't want settings to be blown over. So it's always good to save as much as possible. Just like if you're working on a computer and you're typing out a document, you want to be sure you're saving always and often so that way you don't lose any of your work. Now back to our Y state, double push on the edit button, and now we're on our deep space sound. So I'm going to turn the mix up pretty high and bring our time up as well. Under the advanced tab, we can really change our quality from normal to high, which you may want to experiment with. You can also have a hold function there to where the reverb will just keep going, which is kind of neat. And we can change the EQ and the mix. Our bypass mode is not going to change. So let me show you what's going to happen now. Store, enter, enter, just to save. And this is the issue I have with the AX8, is you only have one reverb block. And so when we go from an X state to a Y state or vice versa, the reverb is going to cut off to move over to the other setting. And this is what this sounds like. So here's a really long, deep space reverb. And there's my spring reverb. You hear that? So the deep space turns off to go back to our medium spring. And if you were allowed to have two different reverbs, you wouldn't have that problem, because you could have one reverb block be on and then the other reverb block just turn on when you want the ambient sound, and then turn back off your ambient reverb, but still have the other reverb on. So, or you could have that be a reverb be bypassed and have that spillover ring out, and then the other reverb block turns on, taking over the reverb sound. And then when you bypass that one and then turn on the first one, they're all going to have their separate spillovers, and you're going to have a nice smooth transition. But we don't get that on the AX8. If you were to upgrade to the FM9 or the AX8 you will get those capabilities. But as of right now, the FM3 only has one reverb block, just like the AX8. So really the AX8 and the FM3 are very similar in that regard. They kind of have similar DSP limitations, but apparently the FM3 has some better algorithms and they sound maybe 10% better. I'm not really sure. I haven't had one in my hands to experiment with that yet. I've only had experience with the AX8 so far. So if you're not too worried about your delays or your reverbs cutting off, then that is what the XY state is for. Okay. So let me show you now how to do channel switching between your X state and your Y state of the amplifier block. So on the foot switch page, we're going to go over and use our A encoder. There's two different options here. We can choose scene 1 and 2. So we can toggle between two scenes, or we can do an XY toggle, which we'll do in this video since we're specifically talking about XY states. So I'm going to press enter. Now you can hear I'm on my X state, which is the clean. And if I press switch 5, that's going to be my Y state. Turn on some delay. Let's go back to layout and actually edit that delay. So the X state, we're going to have to mix down a little bit lower. And we're not going to have a dual delay. Let's change it to something totally different. Let's do a stereo. Let's do a digital mono. We'll have the mix down. And for our Y state, we can get there by just double tapping on the edit button. We'll change this to something totally different. This is the Deluxe Mind Guy, so it's a memory man. And we can turn the mix of this up slightly. And there's all kinds of parameters we can adjust. But for now, we'll keep it at 500 milliseconds just so you can see how we can go from subdivisions on one delay to milliseconds on the other delay. Okay, we can press exit on that. So this will be my clean sound, which has our digital delay on it. Then if I go to my lead sound, and that sounds great as well. But if I want to go to my Y state on the delay, I can just hold down that switch, and now here's the memory man. So me personally, there's not a whole lot else I would really add to this preset. If I'm just doing a normal blues rock type session or a jam, or maybe you're playing in a band, all I would need is just some basic overdrive, some kind of boost, reverb, delay. That'll get you by for a lot of what you would want to do. Now, if you're in the worship scene or you play metal or any other genre out there, you might require some other elements in there, like maybe phase, tremolo, chorus, stuff like that. So in the next video, I'll show you how to set up some scenes and also fine tune your preset even further. So thanks guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Keep rocking.